All right,
I
go
am
ahead.
never ready for this, Dustin. Never.
Yeah, you're always ready. All right, so do your thing. Tell me about how important this is. Observation.
Well, it's, I have so much feeling of uh, really profound gratitude, about many of these techniques, especially the ones that I learned early on that may not have been just associated with lucid dreaming, but with, many practices. And there's an old adage that in a lot of the traditions that the very first things that your teacher teaches you, the very first things are the most important things in the system. Like a lot of times people are waiting to get to, they want to get through the beginning parts because they're just the basics. And then they want to get to these advanced things. And, but they're right from the beginning, they're missing the point that, and some people never get it. But the very, very first things that they teach you are the most important principles in the system. And so, you know, this is one of those, looking at yourself, know thyself is one of the most important principles that you could probably achieve because it's endless, right? If we're evolving, it keeps changing. We keep changing. So there's no bottom to that, right? It's like, I mean, there's some ideas um, that God created us to experience Himself, right? And that's why I always say, that we're just aspects of the one, right? So, I mean, if observation of self is good enough for the one, I'm thinking it's good enough for me, right? I mean, not that I'm creating a bunch of little, hairless apes to wander around and, trying to make their way back to me. That's a kind of a creepy image, but, but, but the idea is the same, right? I want to experience, what's the ideal that I hold for myself right now? Where am I right now, honestly? And, what's the ideal I hold for myself at this stage? And, uh, how would I achieve getting there? Right? I need to know where I am, be brutally honest where I am right now to know, what direction I need to go in and what I need to do to get to my destination, to get to my goals. Observation of mind is one of those classic techniques to sort of bring that to the forefront, and anyone can do it. So I think it's a practice that you should do regularly. How regularly, that's up to each person, but it will be one of the best things that you can do to bolster yourself when you step into the unknown. You step into the unknown, the only reference point you have is yourself. And if you don't know yourself, then you have no reference point.
So do you think that this is in some ways about like an trying to get an honest look at yourself, like beyond because it's
Well,
I
it's
have
not just a look, right? It's you're trying to understand. And so you're trying to know, what drives you? What are your motives for doing anything? And really, what are your motives for being good? What are your motives for being bad? What are your motives for trying to lucid dream or trying to build a good career or have a great family or any of those things? What are your motives for doing that? And, are they truly some kind of altruistic sense? Are they, trying to compare to somebody else's success? Are they, you need to know what your motivations are for everything. You need to understand where your motivations come from, right? So exploring those, observing them first without judgment is crucial, right? So that, you're not digging a bigger pit for yourself by, judging as you do it. It's not about that. It's really honestly looking at it as if you were, observing a TV screen, but with the sound turned down, right? You can observe the picture moving around or things happening on there, but the drama is taken out of it because I don't have this dramatic music or the noises of people talking in there or whatever else it is, right? So I'm not distracted by those things.
Do you always do the observation of mind with a question?
I usually do. I mean, some, in the beginning, they would just say, just do the observation of mind. There was no target for that, like or no parameters. It's like you weren't looking for fearful things, or you weren't looking for happy things, or you were just seeing where your mind went. And, it wasn't, to be honest, there wasn't a huge amount of, difference from one person to the next. Sometimes age made a difference, where their minds, went. Older, they had more life experience. They sort of had already started to discern for themselves what was important, what wasn't important, what they could let go, what they could, what they were focused on at the time. If you're 20, it's going to be different, obviously. If you're 12, it's going to be different, obviously. So, male and female, slightly different too, sure. I mean, we're all a little bit different, but, there's not this huge range that people think, oh, it's just, so unique. It's like, it's not really all that unique. We all have our places that we can't believe our mind would go. But at the same time, without the judgment part of it, you can allow that process to open up and try to get to a deeper understanding of why. Right?
Do you always write down what you see and experience during the practice?
Yeah, usually, just especially more so in the beginning, though, more detail in the beginning, as much as I can remember. I mean, you're only doing it for 5 minutes in the beginning, right? Maybe, later on. I mean, maximum, I think, on this where, you're getting a diminishing return on your investment is probably about 20 minutes. That would be the max. And then after that, it's just sort of, it's hard to hold, the thoughts unless they're so repetitive that.
Do you think that it's kind of it's like the meditation version of dreaming, or not lucid dreaming, but regular dreaming?
Yeah, I think it's like that, because it's not always coherent until you start to see the patterns.
Start to write down what you're seeing.
Yeah.
You start to make notes and look at the recurring themes and really.
Right. And then for me, like, I mind map them, right? Because they're not a linear progression, right? It's just like I'm looking for themes and I'm mind mapping them down, right? So it's like, oh, I'm looking at, let's say, finance, my daughter, like this, that, all these things, something with the house, something with the practice, a certain patient, that, certain conditions that I'm working on, those types of things. So, and I do the mind, because it's not, when you try to, I think sometimes one of the resistances, when you try to make it into this linear flow, there's part of your mind that resists doing that, because it seems we don't always see the internal connections, why one thing comes after another. We don't even know if there is a reason one thing comes after another, right? So to put it more in its natural form, which I feel is more like a mind map, with just, you saw how well it worked with dreams, writing down your dreams and getting that key word or whatever. It works the same way with this, from that non-linear view of those topics, you start to see patterns emerge from that. And those are the things that you can, target and remove if you see patterns within that, right? So it's like all, you know, if you see all these things are about worry about finance, then, you know, you can start doing something about that, right? If it's all about, you know, worried about people's health or certain people's health, you know, it's like you can do that. If it's about certain frustrations or certain fears in your life, you can see those patterns emerge, and then you can do something about them. We have other, you know, the burning technique, you know, burning meditation. We have all kinds of things to sort of dissipate the stress and fatigue that goes along with those mental stressors, right? So, and that just frees up your energy. Remember that every time you have recurrent uh, uh, thoughts that keep you from acting because they sort of put you in this sense of overwhelm or fear or anxiety, right? They stagnate your energy, and it starts to attract more of its same kind, right? And so you end up with this giant ball of stagnant energy within yourself. So the idea is that as I do burning meditation and techniques like that, it burns away that stress and mental fatigue. So it mobilizes the energy again, right? It mulches it, it takes it out, and sort of dissipates it in a much more advantageous way, right? The whole, one of those principles again is, you know, movement of energy is the key. That's the standard, right? Stagnation is bad. Movement is good. So, it can't, everything in the universe moves, right? We know that even from an idea of physics, right? Physical science, right? Everything's moving. Everything is on an anatomical level and beyond is in constant motion, whether we see it or not. We see it as solid, but it's really moving. And so, if you try to fix something, that's why when something is, fixed and seems very solid and stable, it's only a matter of time before that's worn down. I mean, look at the Grand Canyon, right? Look at the, giant rocks on the edge of a seashore, right? I mean, they're getting broken down, small, yes, but they are being broken down on a regular basis because nothing can stay fixed. Everything has to move. Well, you stagnate the energy in your body so much, or around you so much, you can't hold that there for very long. Something will eventually come and break it up.
Do you think that,
you should do that first.
do you think that's where a lot of the stressors come into our life from, or areas where we've stagnated aspects of our life or our
I think so. And I think that, it's sort of, it wants to perpetuate itself, right? Everything wants to perpetuate itself, everything.
So what do you mean by that?
Movement wants to continue. That's the majority of things, right? Everything's moving. So that's sort of the general principle. But, if you have a worry about something and you can't seem to let it go, doesn't it just seem to multiply? And then something else will happen and you kind of toss it in that same bag, and then something else will happen, you toss it in the same bag. And pretty soon it seems like everything that happens is within that realm, right? If it's, the classic one is finance, right? You get you take a bad turn in that direction, and then all of a sudden you got bills coming out of your ears, and you've got, things that you weren't even planning on. The car breaks down, this happens, that happens, and, it starts sucking away at your savings and all of these things, right? And just puts huge amounts of stress on people, right? Because really, I mean, what is it? I mean, it's your independence, right? It's like, that's how you can, and security, right? I mean, those are all the things. It's wearing away at the foundations of you. And so, or at least what you perceive to be you. So, it is a big stressor. And I'm not saying, you just ignore it and don't do anything about it. But, wouldn't it be better if you could just think clearly about it? Like, I had a couple of examples of that in my life where, it was something like that, where I just got like overwhelmed with stuff. And I just thought, holy mackerel, and it worried me day and night, and I couldn't figure out what the hell to do about it. And so, a friend of mine asked me to lunch, And yeah, I didn't really want to go. I just didn't want to go. I didn't feel like it. And I was trying to focus on how to solve all these problems and get out of this, this situation. So, but I did. I went, and he was very convincing. So I went, and and he was like, "Oh, I mean, obviously, when you have good friends, they know when you're out of sorts, right?" And so, obviously, I wasn't acting enough like my typical self. So he was like, "Oh, what's the problem?" So we got into it, and I started, "Well, he had the damn thing solved in like 15 minutes." And I was like, I mean, I'm sure that I used a whole bunch of expletives, which I won't go into here, but it was like, how the hell did you figure that out so fast? Why was that so clear to you? And he's like, oh, it wasn't something, like, oh, I've got this degree in this, or I do this for a living, or whatever. It was just like, obviously, he just saw through to the core of the problem, because, he wasn't bothered with it. I mean, he was bothered that I was bothered, but it wasn't his problem. So he could see it clearly from an angle that I couldn't, because I was too obscured with all these worries. So, it's like we have these problems. They could be decent sized problems, but we layer them with all these other worries around it that haven't even happened yet. And as if they're real, right? And it obscures the actual problem. And it's very hard to solve a problem that you don't know what it is. So, or you're not seeing it clearly, or not seeing it from a different perspective, right? So, and I think that that's one of the beauties of this technique, and of things like burning meditation, right? It clears away the stagnation. It clears away the stress and mental fatigue, so that you can see the situation clearly. Whether it's good or bad, you see it clearly, and then you can act on it clearly, right? It's like, if I don't know what to do, if I don't even know what it is, how do I even know what to do? So, and I think that's where the strength of this comes in. And really, I mean, over the years, it's one of those practices that I've just never given up. It's gotten more and more deep for me, because it's such a good way to keep that obscuration away, right? If you can constantly take away that, the worries and the stress around something, if you can constantly keep it in sharp focus, it's much easier to deal with, much easier, because you don't have all these random things sucking your energy away while you're trying to do that. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
And, it makes me think about, you had said at one point that observation of mind is not just a meditative practice that you're doing in the waking state, but that it's something that you bring into the practice of lucid dreaming. So we'll actually do observation of mind within a lucid dream, because we're fully immersed in our mind.
Right. Yeah, you're deeply, you're in it, right? You're in the landscape of your subconscious, an infinite landscape where everything is possible, right? At your command, basically. So why wouldn't you do it at some optimal place like that? I mean, that's one of the, and burning too, all of the meditational techniques that you should try them there, because they're going to have a profound effect on you. Half of the reason that we do, such long relaxation techniques before we actually do the meditations is to get us closer and closer and open up that bridge to the subconscious, right? Because it is the equivalent of what you're doing in meditation. The effects that you want to achieve are directly related to how well you relax the physical body off before you do the meditation techniques, right? So, that creates this bridge, right? So from the subconscious back out to the conscious mind, into the world. So, yeah, I'm constantly doing that. But when you're already in it, you don't need a bridge. You're already on the other side.
Right.
It's going to be direct. It's like, again, plugging into the source. I mean, that's the deal. It's going to be a profound experience. So, um, yeah, I think that's and the thing with the lucid dream is that those things, a lot of times observation of mind ends up turning into almost a sacred drama, right? Because things start to, you start to act them out, within the lucid dream, or they start to become enacted within the lucid dream, and you're an active participant, right? Because it's your stuff.
So
So
you become an active observer as you
you'd be an
engage.
active participant. Active participant. You're not an observer anymore.
Mm.
You're a participant within that sacred drama of working out the details of, where you are, who you are, what you want to become, what you're becoming. So it's that's it doesn't get more profound than that. It's that's yeah, it just doesn't. So you work through those territories constantly, and you're constantly evolving, right? So hopefully, so that it's a deep well. You're never going to run out of territory because everything's constantly shifting, right? So that's, I mean, I think that's one of the best parts of it.
Well, that's very motivating, very encouraging. So nice. Well, I'll keep up with that, and and in the
And the burning.
and the burning. Yeah. Observe, burn. Observe, burn.
It's so important to do them together, because just observing it, I mean, it's good to understand, but you need to do something about it too, right? So that's where the burning comes in. Burn off the dross, burn off the stress and mental fatigue. You'll have a hell of a lot more energy, and you'll have a lot fewer knee-jerk reactions over things. And that's a good guideline that you're getting some important stuff done. So
Great.
yeah.
All right. Thanks, man. That is very helpful. So
Good.
all right. We'll move on to the next part of the program.
Sounds cool.